let me show you how I use Zettelkasten to go from input to output. And there are 3 steps: notice, diverge, and converge. And for each, we will talk about how the different types of notes come to be. Now, let's get to the first step, which is notice. What are inputs? Inputs happen when we're going about our day. Right? An idea suddenly pops up in our head, an epiphany, that's fleeting note. Or if we're consuming some sort of information, one of the ideas that someone mentions, jump out from the page. So we need to do 3 things to make sure we have our inputs. And that is to notice it, to capture it, and to tag it. Let me go into each step in detail. Step number 1, notice. If I could underline one of these 3 things, it would be to notice. Right, we all experience our world together, yet some people, some great thinkers, they can tell you insights that you never even dreamt of. You just think, oh my gosh, it sounds like it was hiding in plain sight, but how come I didn't see it? And so noticing is really, really crucial. I could make a whole video on this, probably a whole series of videos on the art of noticing, but let's keep it simple. And let's focus on what you notice becomes your input. And so if you want to create interesting output, this part is really important. Train yourself to see people like Malcolm Gladwell, who looked at the outliers. Instead of saying, oh, those are outliers, statistically not that significant, we can ignore them. No, focus on things that other people miss. And this will really power your output. One great exercise to start with is capturing those fleeting thoughts. You don't have to notice anything in the world. Just notice the thoughts that come through your head, because that by itself is the unique combination of things that you notice. And, our brain in the background is trying to put those things together. So when you have a fleeting thought in the shower, when you're walking, just out of nowhere, these epiphanies, get ready to notice them and move on to the second step, which is to capture. We're aware that we see this idea. We want to capture it. Not just, writing one line and then a month later come back to it and look at it and say, I don't know what I was talking about. Right? Think about your future self. Think about the person who has to create the output and make their life easier by 1, rewriting the idea in your own words. It doesn't matter if it's your fleeting thought or if it's an idea in a book that you see. Put them into your own words. Add the source, which reminds you of the context. And then make sure, to the best of your ability, you can put down the main point as the title or put down the main question as the title. This way, it really helps you cement what is it that I really noticed. Because when you come back to this note later on, it will really help if you put a little bit of thought in there to tell yourself, what is this about? Now, I can already hear you say, okay, but I don't have that much time. Every single time, there's an interesting idea, I can't just stop. Okay, no problem, I got you. Let's tag this. And it's not a complicated tagging system. We just ask 2 things. The first question is this output ready? Is this idea ready that I can, whenever I'm creating output, if it's a newsletter, if it's a YouTube video, if it's a paper, an essay, whatever it is this idea ready to be used? If yes, just tag it with whatever output you're going to use this for. Right? Hashtag Twitter, hashtag newsletter, hashtag YouTube video, hashtag course. If it's not ready, just tag it build. That's what I use. You can use whatever word that works for you, but just a reminder to your future self. When you have time to come back and build on ideas, right? Instead of thinking, okay, which idea was that I wanted to flesh out, don't do that, right? Tag it. So your future self that's ready to build on ideas, just search for the tag build and look at all of the ideas that's waiting for you there. Now, the second thing to tag, and this is a relatively new addition, tagging for feeling. And there's 2 specific situations I try to capture. The first one is excitement. Whenever I had an epiphany, whenever I had an idea that really got me excited, previously I had no way of knowing, right? When I type in hashtag build, all of them look the same. I couldn't quite prioritize. But if you put feelings into it and put in the ones that really got you excited, that'd be a great place to start. And so I do hashtag stars. A friend of mine used hashtag fire. The second feeling I take for is this moment of I can't believe it. And it's because I started to have more these coincidences that happen in my life. It reminded me of Lululemon's founder, Chip Wilson. The guy's questionable, okay? But he had this rule of 3 that led him to start Lululemon, which was if he heard 3 different people talk about something within a relatively short period of time, he wants to look into it. That's a signal for a possible trend about to happen. Let me show you an example with a recent coincidence I saw in my life, and of course I put it into my Obsidian, so let me show you that. I was having a conversation with my friend Faye, her from the Idea Compass video, and we were talking about my course, and she mentioned something that really stuck out to me. She said that we meet an idea, and as we go about our lives, forgetting about this idea, when we come back to it again, because we've learned so much along the way that when I see the original idea, I see new connections. I have a new level of understanding. I kind of do this again and again, and we start to refine our understanding of all of these big concepts. And to me, that was a really powerful visual. And so I wrote down very quickly, what she was saying, then wrote it in my own words, and added some tags like this, 2 stars to let myself know, okay, this is a really exciting idea, and the hashtag build. I wasn't quite sure I wanted to connect it to some of the science behind how we understand things, how we make connections, so I wanted to build on this idea. And so I was going about my day, and interesting enough, I was having a talk with another friend. And so Rick also talked about this exact idea, this exact visual. He was talking about going through life in an upward spiral, and he used those 2 words. And he talked about, we learn something, we leave it, and then we continue to grow. And to me, that needed a moon emoji. That was a coincidence I wanted to capture. And I feel like, even though I'm not quite at my 3 things, this is something to look into. I feel like we're all experiencing very similar growth, and I definitely resonate with them. So that was my, capture, notice, and then capture, and then tagging it so then I can come back. Now, the second stage after we've done the noticing is to diverge. Right? We have all of these ideas, right? We want to start connecting them. We want to start processing them. And this is where we take those fleeting notes and literature notes, and we start to make some connections. And where do we start? Well, we already tagged those notes for our future self, so let's start with tags. Well, depending on which stage you are in your input to output, if you're like me, always behind with my YouTube video, with my newsletter, then you probably start with the hashtags that are output driven, so I can get an output after this exercise. If you have more time, then maybe you start with build. And of course, because we tagged our feelings into them, you can always start with one that has higher priority in terms of the excitement that the idea evoked in you. Now let's connect those notes. Right, we've talked about this a whole bunch on this channel. You can use the idea compass. Check out this video here. I'm not going to go into detail. Just very simply, you can stretch it in 4 directions and start to bring the ideas together. You can use visual MOCs, maps of content, right? We talked about maps of content. They're great for putting things in order, start to see some order. Right? It's linear. But of course, you can also map it in Canvas, in Obsidian, right? To start seeing visual movements of how does the hierarchy actually work? Because now we can move things around and start to see what is the actual connection between all of these things, right? It helps us engage a different part of our brain that looks at problems a lot differently. So visual MOC is also great. Now, it doesn't matter what tool you use. It doesn't matter, if it's the compass or the visual MOCs or whatever it is. The important thing is this place is where you generate your insights, right? This is where your fleeting notes and your literature notes turn into permanent notes. So pay attention to the realizations you have when you connect different ideas together, right? The point is less about the connection and more about the insight because you connected the 2 ideas together. So again, really, really important to 1, notice that you have that insight, 2, be able to capture it, right? Rewrite it in a way that your future self can understand what you're saying, and 3, tag it. And this time, think about when you have that insight, sometimes it's way better than the original idea that it came from. All right, so tag it, is this actually the idea I'm going to be writing about? Is this the idea I'm going to, be putting into that paper or putting into that course? So again, let's go back to our note. Let me show you how I diverged with this note. So same example, we've got the upward spiral, and I was thinking about how to stretch this idea. And so I chose the idea compass. If you've been around for a while, you know that I go to my template and I have this idea compass template. And I don't usually go through all of the directions. I think about where do I enjoy thinking about this idea? Why was this idea interesting to me? And go from there. To me, this spiraling up and gaining new understanding, it led me to north. The theme, the question that we are trying to answer, which to me is, what do we learn from experience, which is a note I already had before. And also this thought experiment called Mary's Room, a color specialist who knows everything there is to know about color, but she's never seen color before. So when she sees color, does she learn something new? That's a very interesting question. I think I have a hypothesis. But also, talking about theme and question about the spiraling, to me, it's also the difference between knowing and understanding. at the DKIW framework, which I talk about in my course a lot. And we can read all the words on these topics, but we can only make limited connections between the words. Right? We need to go further and understand why. But when we do expand our knowledge, we can make more of those connections, right? Then we can see the why certain words are important. Because it's similar to why we hashtag our feelings. When we don't understand something, we read everything as a definition. Okay, every single word has a meaning, and so it is what it is. But when we gain a deeper understanding, we start to almost see in our eyes certain words are bolded, certain words are in italics, right? Because of our understanding, we start to see the nuance. And I think that was really interesting. Okay, so I stretched this a little bit, and then so where does this lead to then? And for me, this leads to an idea I have already created about framework thinking. Framework thinking is a practical way and a systematic way to go from information to knowledge, knowledge to understanding, understanding to wisdom. And so I feel like there is something here where we can systematically, spiral up and continue to develop our understanding and eventually wisdom. Okay, so to me, this was like, okay, now I've got a idea that I can work with. And now the output to me is my 15 frameworks in 15 days. And so I tag that's my output. And I need to now converge and be able to know exactly what I'm going to put into my course. After we've noticed, after we've diverged, we started making these connections and started to really create our own insights, right? It's time to converge. Focus on one idea, being able to articulate it, put it out into an output. So again, where do you start with diverging? We went, up, down, over, under with our connections. And now here we want to come back, right? Here we definitely focus on the tags that are output driven. For me, it is course or YouTube channel or, newsletter, Twitter. I pick one, and here I really want to prioritize the ideas that gave me that joy, that is really exciting. So I look through the feelings, and I pick one of those. Then I use a template to help me remember what are the things that my output needs. So let me show you on Obsidian what is my output template. The diverging got us to somewhere very different. I thought, okay, actually framework is the thing that's going to take us through this information to knowledge, to understanding, to wisdom. So I want to work on this for my course as I've tagged here. So let's go into it a little bit more. We want to converge, and there are two templates I use. One of them is the output checklist. So this is just a quick checklist I use currently to see, okay, am I hitting all of the things that could be interesting when I create output? So one is the main point, definition of key ideas, etymology of the key words. I feel like sometimes that's really interesting. Having examples, having quotes, having anecdotes that's personal or from other people, having related ideas, right? Again, we're always looking for that connection because that's where the insight lies. And related previous output, especially when I do something like newsletter, YouTube channel things, that I want to be able to refer back to other things I've done. And also, lastly, but most importantly, I have to think about the hook. First one, the main point. Framework thinking is a practical and systematic way to go from information to knowledge to understanding to wisdom. It manages overwhelm and get wiser with a system in place. To me, that's the main point that I want to make in my course. Second point, details, right? Let me expand on this a little bit. Frameworks are quick hacks on the surface. It's like, let's go faster, let's think faster, let's decide faster. And these are knowledge bits that you can pick up, very high efficiency and effectiveness. But actually, the more frameworks you have, the more experience you have using framework thinking. And the thinking part is the connection making part. So you get used to this mode of thinking that trains you to recognize what other people gloss over, because you have these frameworks to help you focus on different parts of information, different parts of knowledge. So they teach you to go beyond the obvious, which is perfect because we've been talking about this a long time, that just at the very beginning, what makes you a great input to output person is that you notice something other people don't. So because of that, the world now makes more sense. You see why you're stuck. You see why certain frameworks exist. You see more of that clarity. not because of the frameworks themselves, but the way the frameworks train you to see. To me, that's very exciting. Now let's keep on building on this idea. The definition of key ideas. 2 things I need to do. 1 is framework thinking, and 2 is DIKW, this process of going from data all the way to wisdom. And I'll have to work on those. And then examples, right? The one I put down here was the 80-20 rule. If you've been here for a while, is the easiest one to get started, right? Start using it in productivity and you prioritize to-dos. But then there's pattern recognition based on experience, right? You start to get a feel of, what's the 20% that's going to yield that 80%? You start to spot the patterns in your own way of behavior. And so your mind starts to automatically scan things, not just for productivity, but for somewhere else. And it starts to hypothesize, and you are no longer just living passively. Okay, and then quotes, right? I want at least one good one, and I think this Herbert Spencer was quite interesting. The great aim of education is not knowledge, but action. Right? Yes, it's great to have a bunch of things, and I think that's the pain point everyone has. It's, I have so many frameworks, but I never use them in my life. And really, really important. And the focus for my course also is, how can I make it actionable? Not so easy. I'm still working on it. But I really think that is the aim of education, not to just sit there and soak up knowledge. Okay. Then anecdotes. So this is where I'm going to bring back that spiraling up experience. To me, that's a great personal anecdote to demonstrate this point. Maybe I'll find others. I don't have any good ones in mind yet. So then let me move on to related ideas. Second order thinking as a framework is quite a good one. What happens when you start to think frameworks is not just immediate results, but also things that change fundamentally about who you are, which is really cool. Also, probably how to set up feedback loops so that you capture on this long-term change. And related previous output for me, I don't think I have anything that really explicitly says this, so I'm going to leave it for now. Maybe it can refer to a video somewhere later down the line. And the hook, I'm still working on it. Because I don't know if I need to go in with the, get rich quick benefit of the frameworks and talk about this long-term stuff later or not. I feel like this could be the end of the course. So let me think about it. And maybe I open with a story. Maybe I open with an anecdote, actually. Open with anecdote. Okay, so that would be an example of how I would converge. Of course, this doesn't look like the final product. What I do then is get feedback. Ever since I took David Perel's writing course, I really saw the importance of getting feedback because I can only create so much. I need the ideas to bounce off of someone else to give me hints to build it out. And so let me show you how I do that. Squintle for sponsoring today's video. Squintle is what I use to supplement Obsidian. When I'm working on that input to output flow, in the middle, I need to get feedback. For example, this is my course, and I was working on the intro and wanted feedback from some friends on, do the frameworks make sense? Do the examples make sense? Does the way we link things make sense? And in Obsidian, it's really hard to share that. I can use Obsidian Publish, except it doesn't currently support Canvas. And so I have to send them walls of text, and, we all know how we respond to not so visual information. The feedback I get is not great. And yes, there are plugins that get around it, but the other thing with Canvas is not everything is saved in Markdown. So that's why I use Squintle. I can upload my Markdown files in here. I can move them around. I can create new Markdown files and then put them back into Obsidian. So it's really easy. And when I want to share, all I have to do is click publish and it'll give me a link. Let me show you what that link looks like. When you open the link, it looks like this. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to do anything. The notes are already there. The links are already there. No extra notes will show up. And for me, this really helps me so that others can look at my building blocks and give me some feedback. What do they think about the order? What do they think about the notes I left? So if you're interested, it's $5 a month. They're still in beta, so use my link for access as well as 20% off. Or if you don't want to pay for it, at the end of the year, they'll have a free version, so you can wait for that. And yeah, let's get back to it. Now you have the structure. Check out this video here to see how exactly you can start to make those insights from connections, especially using visuals here. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.